Okay, so movement intelligence isn't something people either have or don't have. It's going to be shaped by a mix of both natural ability and environmental influence. So, there are several key factors that help determine how well individuals develop movement skills. So, first of all, starting at a young age. So, we see early movement experiences are going to be critical. The younger a person is when they begin exploring physical activity like running, climbing, balancing, doing what kids just naturally go out and do when they're bored, the more their nervous system adapts and builds a stronger foundation for complex skills later on in life. And this is why play and physical activity are so important in childhood. And we actually talked about this, or the director talked about this in Miami a lot, where he could see every year how each class got more and more uncoordinated. And that's because when you look at the kids growing up in the early 90s, there wasn't maybe a lot of technology. A lot of their experiences were outside participating in some sort of physical activity, whereas the early thousands, you started to get video games that were around and more accessible to a lot of individuals, and so their physical activity decreased a lot. And now you have just smartphones and sitting around, and parents not forcing kids to go outside and play. And as a result, you have individuals who are very uncoordinated relative to individuals who were born a decade earlier. Now, we also see that movement intelligence is going to develop with time on task. So we need to make sure we have adequate learning and time to practice. So, to truly master and refine movement patterns, individuals need consistent and progressive practice. One or two sessions aren't going to be enough. Skill acquisition requires repetition in order to ingrain motor programs and coordination. We also see that qualified instruction is going to be very important. So, having a coach, a teacher, a therapist who understands movement fundamentals can accelerate learning greatly. So, good instruction helps people avoid bad habits. It's going to provide cues to refine technique and also introduce the right skill progressions at the right time, so we don't try something maybe too early, or we also are able to make sure that we aren't holding an individual back and advancing too slowly. Appropriate equipment's also going to be a factor that affects movement intelligence, so tools and the environment matter. So equipment needs to be scaled to the learner. So, for instance, with baseball or softball, your bats are going to be much lighter, much smaller at the 8 to 10-year-old range versus your 17, 18-year-old age range. So, this is going to make early practice successful and prevent frustration. Could you imagine if you had a bat that was almost the same size when you were 8 versus when you were 18, how heavy that bat would be whenever you were 8. So we also have to consider proper surfaces, shoes, and protective gear also are all going to play a part in supporting safe and effective learning. And then you have your organized progression. So building skills step by step. So, for example, before learning to, say, serve in tennis, a student should first master just tossing the ball and then making contact, and then controlling the speed of the swing. And so there's a logical progression that prevents overload and builds confidence along the way. So another example with those Olympics, before we just throw someone in and have them do a full Olympic clean, and they've never done it before, we focus on just being able to jump and to jump properly and have full triple extension, and then progressing to being able to land in the same spot over and over again, and then adding weight with jump shrugs, and then introducing the barbell with clean pulls, and then high pulls, and then high receives eventually. And so movement intelligence isn't just talent. It's a combination of early stimulation, of structured learning, and supportive conditions. And so when teachers or coaches get these pieces right, they end up maximizing someone's long-term skill potential and confidence in the movement, which is why we actually kind of have our structure and hierarchy on practitioners backwards. So usually our best practitioners are going to be at the professional or collegiate level, where they're getting paid millions, and then you have your high school and then trickling down. Whereas actually we should have our best practitioners actually working with the younger populations, and then we wouldn't have to have our best practitioners at the older ages, because we developed the individual properly along the way during their youth, where we now have ingrained these proper motor programs in to the individual, as opposed to having to fix a lot of these improper movement inefficiencies that they develop at younger ages. All right, so before we start going deeper into motor learning and control, we probably need to define what we mean when we talk about motor skill, because this term is going to come up repeatedly, and we see there's a couple different ways we can think about skill. So first of all, we can think of skill as a task. So this is going to be an action or movement pattern someone must learn to accomplish a specific goal. So some important characteristics, we see it's going to be voluntary, so it's not a reflex or an automatic response. It's goal directed, so the movement is done with a purpose, and it's learned. So we aren't born knowing how to, say, catch a baseball or ride a bike or serve a tennis ball. Those actions develop through practice and experience. And then we can also think of skill as the quality of performance. So it's not just can you do it, but how well can you do it? So a skilled performer can bring about a desired result reliably with maximum certainty, while using the least amount of energy or time possible. So think of someone, say, catching a baseball. A beginner might fumble or drop the ball or need several tries, right? Maybe as a kid you're still trying to catch with an underhand glove up by your chest instead of just rotating the glove up. Whereas a skilled player catches it very smoothly with minimal wasted motion. So when we talk about skill in motor behavior, we're looking at both the nature of the task itself and the efficiency and the consistency of how it's performed. Both perspectives matter when we're studying how skills are learned and controlled, but we will take a little deep dive into skill as a quality of performance in the next couple slides. All right, so first of all, what is maximum certainty? Well, it's the idea that being skilled means that you can reliably produce the desired outcome, whatever it is. Not sometimes, not just when we get lucky, but almost every single time you attempt the skill. So if you only achieve a performance outcome occasionally, that's not true skill. That's luck that is playing a pretty decent role. So, for example, think about Steph Curry shooting free throws versus, say, a 5-year-old shooting free throws. Sure, if that 5-year-old throws the ball up enough times, some shots will go in, but that's as much luck, if not more luck, than skill. Whereas Steph Curry, on the other hand, has trained to the point where we can expect the ball to go in with a fairly high level of certainty. In fact, we are more shocked when he misses a free throw than when he makes it. We just assume he's going to make it. So maximum certainty is about the consistency and repeatability. So a skilled performer can generate the correct movement and outcome over and over again, regardless of any small changes in the environment. And remember, this is going to take time. Even Steph Curry at 5 or even 10 years old wasn't nearly as skilled as he is now. So that kind of certainty only comes with practice and refinement of that skill over and over and over again. Now, another hallmark of skill as quality of performance is efficiency. So being able to perform a movement while using the least amount of unnecessary energy. So skilled performers don't just complete the task, they do it in a way that's very smooth and economical. So an example I use a lot would be looking at these two individuals from one of my weight training classes at Southern Mississippi. So one individual was a track athlete. So he was a sprinter, and as a skilled sprinter, the stride during their 5-minute jog around the track to warm up looked very relaxed, very efficient. You could tell that he was conserving energy while still moving very, very fast. He looked almost like a gazelle jogging around the track, whereas someone who tried keeping up with him the whole time, they were running at the same pace, but this individual looked more like Rocky Balboa in the sand whenever he's training with Apollo Creed in Rocky 3, where he's laboring, he's maybe not able to transfer the energy as efficiently throughout the kinetic chain. Maybe he's twisting, he was wasting a lot of energy on the movement that didn't really contribute toward the forward motion of jogging around the track. And so even though they were running at the same exact speed, you had the sprinter who was very efficient, wasn't even breaking a sweat at a given speed. And then another individual who was, I would say, equally as fit, but not as efficient in the movement, was laboring and actually working well above a normal warm up pace. Now, efficiency also means that you can last longer and save energy at key points. So, for example, my dad had a friend in high school who was a great swimmer. He wasn't one of the stronger athletes, but his movement was so smooth. It was such an efficient technique that uh, he would dominate a lot of races. But there's one athlete from another school that would just pace off of him and then know that on the last leg he could kick because he was stronger, more powerful, and pass the smaller, weaker swimmer. That was very efficient. And so in the state championship, they actually ended up posting the worst times because what the coach told my dad's friend to do was just to go all out, swim as hard as you could the whole time. And because you have that smooth, efficient technique, his pace isn't going to maybe drop off as much at the end because he didn't have that ability for the kick at the end. Whereas the individual who wasn't a good swimmer but just paced off of someone who was a good swimmer burned himself out. So whenever he needed to tap into that extra strength he had, it wasn't there and he wasn't able to kick. And so even though they posted their worst times, the efficient swimmer who had been getting beat throughout the year actually won in states because of his more efficient and fluent technique. So the key takeaway is that skilled performance isn't just necessarily about power, it's also, or about maximum certainty, but also about the economy of effort. So saving energy allows athletes to redirect focus to strategy during the game, creativity, and finish strong whenever it matters the most. Now, another dimension of skilled movement or skill as the quality of performance is time. So, being able to complete a skill as quickly as possible without sacrificing control or outcome. So, this is very important for many activities. So, think of your 100-meter sprint. The entire goal of the race is to finish faster. Or another good example would be a hockey slap shot. So the quicker you get the shot off, the harder it is for the goalie to react, right? So speed isn't necessarily everything. When you push for faster movement, you can often lose accuracy. So for example, swinging a golf club too fast often causes a mishit, or typing very quickly can lead to very common errors, or frequent errors, I should say. And so moving faster, we see also changes how your muscles work and and this can end up increasing energy cost. So, for instance, looking at sprinting versus jogging, jogging is a much more efficient movement than sprinting. So, sprinting recruits more fast twitch muscle fibers and burns more energy compared to a controlled, steady state pace. And so, the key takeaway would be that minimizing time is critical and a critical skill element in sports that rewards speed oftentimes, but not every movement benefits from going faster. So skilled performers need to know when to push for speed and then when precision or endurance maybe matters a little more than simply minimizing time. Now, there are going to be many different ways to classify skills, so we can separate them by team versus dual versus individual sports, or by season, like summer versus winter activities. But these categories don't really tell us about how skills are learned and performed. And so, what really matters most in motor behavior is going to be how environment can affect skill, and this is going to boil down to the concepts of open and closed skills. So, closed skills are going to be skills performed during in stable and predictable environments. So, these are performed in settings where nothing unexpected is going to happen. So, like I said, very stable environment. Examples would include like your gymnastics routines, bowling, shooting, archery, free throws during basketball game. The performer can plan, practice, and execute almost identically every single time. And then you have your open skills. These are going to be performed in dynamic and changing settings. So think soccer, hockey, tennis, basketball. The environment is going to be unpredictable because you have other players, opponents, or changing conditions. Maybe it's raining one day, maybe it's 75 degrees, and the next, maybe it's snowing, maybe there's no wind, tons of wind another day. And so here with open skills, we are going to need a certain level of adaptability and quick decision making in order to have our best performance. So open skills, we're going to have a variable and unpredictable environment. With closed skills, we're going to have a stable and predictable environment. So understanding whether a skill is open or closed helps us design better practice. So closed skills can benefit from repetition and consistency, while open skills require some variability in our practice and reacting to changing situations. So closed skills are performed under constant, relatively unchanging conditions. The environment's stable, predictable, nothing unexpected is happening. That would force you to adapt mid-movement. The movement form itself is often the goal of the skill. So you have a more predetermined movement that is often the actual goal. Think about gymnastics. The mat or the beam doesn't suddenly change or rotate or shift. The athlete's focus is solely on executing the exact routine that they practiced. You could take darts, would be another example. So the target doesn't move, so success relies solely on the precision and technique of the throw. You also have other examples that you can see on the images. Bowling, dance choreography, diving, all are going to be highly planned and repeatable. So the athlete or performer can refine the same motion over and over again. So key point, closed skills emphasize consistency and technique mastery because the conditions don't change. So perfect practice of the movement pattern is going to be critical for success. Now, again, open skills happen in environments that are constantly changing and are unpredictable. So the performer has to adjust and respond to whatever's happening in real time. And so you can't plan everything out ahead of time. So responses can't be made effectively far in advance because we don't know what's going to take place 30 seconds from now. So these skills are going to be more reactionary. Your response is shaped by what the environment throws at you at that moment. So think about wrestling. How you take an opponent down depends on their movement, their balance, and momentum of that individual at that exact second. Or football, you have to cut or dodge defenders, all based off of reacting to your opponent's unpredictable behavior, right? You have an idea of what they're going to do, but you don't really know until you're in that exact moment. So because you can't plan the exact sequence of actions, open skills demand adaptability, anticipation, and quick decision making. So the athlete constantly gathers sensory information, interprets it, and then adjusts, right? There's no way Saquon Barkley knew that he was going to have to hurdle a guy backwards. But based off of his momentum, his positioning, and the defender's positioning, that's what the best option was, evidently. So other examples are going to include baseball. So fielding a ball with maybe an unexpected bounce or a bad hop. You have rugby or volleyball, where you don't necessarily know where the ball is going to be hit every time. So each play is unique, and success is going to depend on adjusting your movement on the fly. So open skills require flexibility and rapid response, while closed skills rely on consistency and precision. And this distinction is important when we're planning practice and training strategies. Now, it's important to note that we don't just simply have closed skills or open skills. Instead, skills are going to exist on a continuum. So not every activity is purely that open or closed. A lot of skills are going to fall somewhere in that in-between range. So golf is a good example. So it's mostly a closed skill because the movement itself is highly consistent and controlled. You practice the same swing repeatedly, but golfers still have to respond to elements like wind, slope, turf type. So there's still a slight open skill component. You have other examples like archery, which is going to be very closed, very controlled environment. You have skiing, which maybe is more open because of the environment changes that occur through the slope. So, or I should say, the environment is changing constantly. So, the snow, for instance, how powdery it is, how soft, how deep it is it more ice-like where you're just sliding down a piece of ice the whole time? There was one day we went out snowboarding, and one person in just our group, broke their wrist, and the other broke their collarbone because it was just a solid sheet of ice when we tried going down the mountain. In fact, when I wiped out, I just kept sliding down the rest of the mountain. You didn't stop. You just had to figure out how to stand back up because it was just so icy that day. You also have the slope that's constantly changing. Right, you're not going to go down the same path every single time. You also have other skiers, snowboarders, skiers who never look behind them. So They have no idea about anyone behind them. It's like a person who doesn't ever use their mirrors while driving and just randomly swerves on the road so that you can't ever pass them. And so then you have to adjust your path based off of those individuals who aren't aware of you behind them. And then you also have your team sports like football and soccer that are going to be very open. So you're reacting to the opponents and the flow of the game. So skills can't just simply be neatly labeled as open or closed. It's better to see them on a spectrum. So this helps when designing practice. So some sports need stable, repetitive reps, while others need more unpredictability built into their training. Now, the dynamic systems theory is going to be, I guess you could say, presented as an alternative to the motor program theory. So while the motor programs assume that the central nervous system stores detailed movement plans that you just pull up and run whenever you want to perform the task, the dynamic systems theory suggests that that approach is going to actually put too much emphasis on the central nervous system and instead argues that movement emerges naturally as the body systems like muscles, joints, sensory inputs interact with the task and the environment. So the body is a self-organizing system. It's constantly searching for stability and efficiency without needing a pre-written program. So some key concepts of the dynamic systems theory, it's going to be more locally controlled. So control is distributed. It's not just from the top down from the brain. It's also going to be self-organizing. So each execution adapts to the current conditions. And then we also see more variability. So it's less fixed. No two movements are going to be exactly the same, and variability is actually fairly normal and beneficial for adapting. Now, the advantages to the dynamic systems theory would be one, it explains how new skills can emerge what seems to be spontaneously without any stored pattern. And so this accounts for adaptability in changing environments, whereas some disadvantages to the dynamic systems theory would be that it doesn't fully explain how we get our consistent performance for complex skills. So without the memory of patterns, it's going to be harder to describe how we're able to refine and stabilize skills over time. So the key takeaway is that the dynamic systems theory highlights morphological, biomechanical, and environmental factors. So for instance, how you sprint may be different when you are 5'11", 165 pounds, like Saquon Barkley was at one point, versus 6 foot, 230 pounds, and your legs are tree trunks, right? So the full range of motion that we get whenever he was 165 versus 230 is going to be completely different. It's going to, he would have a much longer time to go through that full range of motion with the smaller legs versus whenever he has tree trunks, and as soon as he flexes his knee, his butt's already getting touched by his heel because it's just one big massive blob, right? So while the dynamic systems theory looks into morphological, biomechanical, and environmental factors, the program or motor program theory leans heavily onto that central nervous system control and the storage of movement plans.